All right, welcome to week 40 of the Designerama, the daily design challenges that are also weekly design challenges. And this week we're focused on two things that not everyone tends to be extremely informed on, and we're combining them. So, one is accessibility, the other is data visualization. And this can be a fairly, I don't know, daunting, scary challenge. But what I would say is that the effort this week is really, yeah, much like every other week, but I think a little bit less this week is on your actual successful outcomes of your product and more just thinking through the process. And that is, how do I take a very fairly complex visual communication of something and make it so that people with limited abilities or different abilities, differently abled people can consume it in the same way, can sort of get the same information in the same way. And a lot of times there is an effort to try to make it so that everyone can learn or ingest the information without being isolated, without being sort of sent off to a different space. So it does become a fairly complex challenge. And in this week, there are a number of resources that I'll try to pull up on screen here for you. But we have an article here about just a general article on accessibility that's fairly good, and it goes over a lot of the basics. So this would be a really great intro to accessibility, and there'll be a number of articles at the bottom that you can look into. There is a course on IXDF. It's Accessibility How to Design for All. This is comprehensive, so that if you find at the end of this week that accessibility is something that's interesting to you, you may want to dive more deeply and go through this course. I think it's an excellent course, and it'll help you come out the other side fairly well informed. It's a fairly substantial one, though, so maybe about a month and a half, about 40 hours worth of work. There's one here on data visualization, but this is really just a series of articles. So you can go through all these articles and learn about data visualization, data analysis techniques, so on and so forth. But you'll have to make a lot of connections potentially on your own. There is a presentation here from Nancy Shin at Johns Hopkins about data visualization for everyone. So it's a specific this topic, a lesson on accessibility. And there are a lot of good slides in here that talk about the do's and don'ts. They're pretty cleanly communicated, so it's a really great resource. And then the last one I have in here is the US Web Design System. And there is a component, or there's an area in here about data visualization, and it also does talk about lossless representation, but also accessibility. So there's a lot of good information in here from a design and technical perspective on how to build things that are more accessible, specifically data visualizations. And so this week, in order to make a comprehensive week-long challenge, if that's what you're hoping to do, think about an area that you're interested in and maybe even be a little more specific. So if you're interested in the communication of weather, really focus on that. If it's sort of summarizing fitness information, go that direction. If it's something about epidemiology, food availability, what have you, try to really narrow down on that. And you can even approach some of these exercises using the same data visualization if you'd like. But really find a topic that's interesting to you and find a visualization that's interesting to you that you think is very impactful, because it will be the sort of thing that helps you think, how do I take the meaning that I got from this and communicate it differently to accommodate everybody? Day 1, accessible chart redesign, improve equity and comprehensive. So choose an existing chart, redesign it for accessibility, improve color contrast, avoid color-only meetings, clear labels, legends, annotations, and assure screen reader friendliness. So if you get into the development side of this, you might want to think about alt text and ARIA roles. If you don't, it may be worthwhile annotating your designs with that. and indicating that it needs to be done. What I find is, at least in my experience, a lot of front-end developers are already cognizant of at least the ARIA roles. So you may have a willing partner professionally to support this. And so again, especially if they're focused on government development. But it may be good to bridge that gap by including these in your designs, in your annotations. And at the end of this, you just should have a redesign chart with brief accessibility notes talking about why you made the decisions you did, the outcomes that they'll support. And again, if you're practicing for a particular role in a particular organization, maybe speak to some of the requirements that organization would have for accessibility and data visualization. Day 2, prototype a tactile chart. And this is a little bit sort of off the beaten path because you're going to be building something physical. But you could also think from the perspective of haptic feedback and virtual reality, haptic feedback and augmented reality. But I think this is a good way to start bridging the gap between digital and physical and prototyping and thinking about how information could be communicated differently. So find a chart that you want to communicate and then just grab elements and this becomes a little bit of an arts and crafts project. Think about how you can use difference in how relief something is, textures, so on and so forth to communicate that information. And just use anything that you have lying around. It's mentioning very, very specific tools such as Braille labels, wiki sticks, so on and so forth. But do your best with what you have to make this work. I mean, you could use food products and glue, cardboard, just anything you have on hand to try to make this work, and then think about how it is effective. And then you could even then add some notes on how this could be, or how this could leverage haptics or other interactive tools to support communication of that data. Fun exercise for day 2. Day 3, add narrative context. So help users understand why the data matters. Create annotations or a supporting story. So this is sort of taking the data visualization and adding a layer to it that helps articulate what you're trying to show. So it becomes another layer of communicating the same thing. Create a headline, 1 to 3 takeaway messages, guided reading order, cultural neutrality, and reduced bias. And the output of this is just an annotated visualization or storyboard of the data story to really communicate sort of the nature of what the information is and why it's important. Day 4, interactive exploration. So support autonomy and discovery. Design an interface that lets users filter, sort, drill down into the data, toggle views from chart to simple table, access structured descriptions, and audio cues. So how can you make an interactive exploration that is also accessible? And some of it in making it interactive and being able to switch between sort of these phases or states is a part of making it accessible, but at the same time, it adds complexity, which could also cause challenges with accessibility. So a tough thing to think through, but it should definitely be a fun exploration. And day 5, inclusive dashboard design. So bring everything together into a multi-access system. Create a dashboard aligned with information hierarchy, accessible components, inclusive choices. And at the end, you should just have a cohesive small dashboard with built-in accessibility principles. So if your charts all prior to this week were about weather, this may be your chance to bring together a weather dashboard or a weather app landing page. But relatively straightforward in concept, so in instruction, but in execution, that's where you're going to get all of your, so we're going to build all your muscles thinking through this about how to take principles of accessibility and data visualization and communicate a good story to everyone. I'll see you on day 1 and best of luck as you pursue this week.